Good morning, Rabbi.
Good morning. Oh. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. Let us go. With the help of Hashem, we are learning ERUVIN Daf Lamed Tes. Let's quickly take a step back. We began yesterday on Daf Lamed Ches in the Mishnah, a machloikis between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim, which really became a three-way machloikis tanoim regarding when you have Shabbos and Yom Tov adjacent, occurring one right near the other, one goes into the other, whether we view these 2 days as Kedusha Achas, whether we view these days as Shtei Kedushos, or whether there's a suffix, whether it's one Kedusha or two Kedushas, in the context of ERUVIN. If a person places an Eruv in the beginning of the first day, for example, if Friday is Yom Tov, Shabbos is Shabbos, so it's Yom Tov Shabbos. If you place an Eruv Thursday night in one direction, can you place an Eruv for going into Shabbos in the opposite direction? Or B'chlal not place an Eruv for Shabbos? Are they bound one to the other? Rabbi Eliezer holds two Kedushas. The Chachamim in the Mishnah hold it's a suffix. And then we learned that you have the Shittas that hold that it's one Kedush. We then learned that regardless, that means if it's Take one Kedusha, you only place one Eruv in the beginning of the first day, in our example, before Yom Tov, and that is the Eruv for Yom Tov and Shabbos. But if it's two Kedushas, or at least suffix two Kedushas, so you have to place two Eruvin. We learned about the inyan of Hachana. Hachana means that one may not use Yom Tov for Shabbos. And therefore, even if you have to place two Eruvin, and even if physically you're going to have to renew the Eruv going into the second holy day, in our example before Shabbos, since when it was placed Thursday, it was already placed for both days in the same direction or in opposite directions, and the declaration, this is the sugya that we're learning, and certainly so is Shitas Rabbah, that the declarations need to be made before Yom Tov begins, before the first day begins. So even when you have to renew it by taking it away for technical reasons, it might be destroyed, and placing it back, that in itself is not called Hachana, because the oral declaration is going to be made only before Yom Tov. The effectiveness of the Eruv, according to Rabbah, is only on Shabbos itself. It means it goes into effect Chilas Hayom. So Shabbos can be mechen for Shabbos, no problem with that. So you have no issue of Achana. Really, all of that was Shitas Rabbah. Abaya and Rabbah Bar Rav Chanan, who asked Rabbah, they didn't accept his approach. They actually hold that even making a oral declaration on Yom Tov for Shabbos is not a problem. There's no problem in Hachana. So we're going to finish up learning that sugya, and then we're going to begin on Daf Lamed Tes, Rosh Hashanah. Now, Rosh Hashanah is unique. Rosh Hashanah might be, L'Kula Alma might be considered a suffix. Why would it be a suffix? Because really, there's only one day Rosh Hashanah. The reason why there's 2 days Rosh Hashanah, not only like we have 2 days Yom Tov outside Eretz Yisrael, but you have 2 days Rosh Hashanah in Eretz Yisrael, is because only if you are mamish near the Sanhedrin will you know whether the Eidin testified that there's a new Chodesh or not. Whether today is Rosh Chodesh, whether tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh, meaning Rosh Hashanah. So do we view the 2 days Rosh Hashanah as 2 days of suffix? If it's viewed as 2 days of suffix, then for sure it's considered 2 kedushos. A person can place one Eruv for the first day and another Eruv in a different direction for the second day, or only make an Eruv for one day and not make it all for the other day. Or do we say that now that Chazal tell us that we have to keep 2 days Rosh Hashanah, it's considered kedusha achas midrabanan, but it's considered one long day. We actually, the term in halach is a yom ha'arichta. So we're going to learn the same concept when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, and ultimately on Daf Lamed Tes, we're going to learn what about 2 days of Yom Tov Chutz La'aretz. How do we view that? That certainly began because of a suffix, and now it's a minhag Abisenu b'Yodenu. Will there even be one shita that's going to say that even the 2 days Yom Tov Chutz La'aretz is considered kedusha achas, or even though it appears that Rabbi Yossi said that, we're going to see that many opinions in Rabbi Yossi hold that the girsa was wrong, or they add a nuance which takes away that opinion. We're going to have a story of a deer that was brought to the household of the Reish Galusa, and that's going to lead us, that's going to help us review another topic related. The other topic is that if a goy does something for a yid on that day of Shabbos or on that day of Yom Tov, a yid may not benefit from that. Even that after that day, normally you have to wait b'chdei sheyasu, b'chdei sheyasu, right? Not to b'chlal benefit. So if you did something that takes an hour, even after that day left, I have to wait an additional hour. Here again, there's going to be a case, at least according to certain versions, that the story's case was that a deer was trapped on the first day of Yom Tov. The question is whether you can eat it on the second day Yom Tov. Here again, it's the same question. If it's kedusha achas, it's the same day. You cannot benefit that day. If it's considered a separate day, now like even mimanav shach, maybe the first day b'chlal was in Yom Tov. You get that? And if the first day was Yom Tov, today is already the day after. If yesterday was Erev Yom Tov, b'chlal, nothing happened wrong, whether you can eat of that deer or not. There was really a machlokas amoraim. All of that will be explained. Let us start on Daf Lamed Tes Amud Aleph. We left off 6 lines from the top of the Amid. In the middle of the line, Gufa Amar Rav Yehuda. Says the Gemara, Gufa Amar Rav Yehuda. This is going back Bishitas Rabbah, taking Hachana to the extreme, that other than physically walking there, and even that was questioned, how do you allow that to happen? That was the top of the Amid, because it's Lav Muchach Hamilsa, but to be Ma'ariv, for the first time, to make an oral, to say the bracha, to say the Eruv orally, may not be done. So it says, Rabbi Yehuda, we learned above, Eruv Baragla B'Yom Rishon, as we keep on learning, there's really 2 ways of making an Eruv. One is you physically walking there, the Ma'ariv Beraglayim, right? If you did that, so we learned, first of all, that Ma'ariv Baragla B'Sheni. That's the shita of either 2 kedushos or safek 2 kedushos. You have to do it again. You have to renew it. Likewise, Eruv Apas B'Yom Rishon, Ma'ariv Apas B'Yom Sheni. Furthermore, says Rav Yehuda, Eruv Apas B'Rishon, you don't have to renew the Eruv exactly the same way. You can be Ma'ariv Baragla V'Sheni. However, now we go into Achana. If Eruv Baragla B'Rishon, now, Ein Ma'arav B'Pas B'Sheni. Ein Ma'arav B'Pas B'Sheni. Why not? Beraglav, yeah. But the Pas, no, because if it's whether because the first day was Beraglav, or maybe the problem is simply putting bread down she'ein ma'arvin batchila bepas. We may not initially make an eruv with bread, like here we're speaking about again. Let's just keep one case. It's Yom Tov, Friday, and Shabbos. You always place the eruv for Shabbos the prior. You cannot place bread on Yom Tov for Shabbos. With bread, now really it's because the original one was beraglov, but let's focus more on the putting down of the bread, because this will constitute bread, a new eruv. And when you put down a new eruv, you have to make the oral declaration, the bracha and the bedain. And that's something that may not be done because of hachana. So guys, the opposite we learned is clearly okay. If for the first day you were ma'arav bepas, then you are allowed to be ma'arav beraglov to go back to the same place. No oral declaration is needed. But if the second day is being done bepas, says Rabbi Yehuda, you may not do it. Says the Gemara, I don't understand that eruv bepas b'yom harishon. You just said that if bread was put on the first day, then you could be ma'arav bepas b'yom sheni. So is putting down bread considered a new eruv? If it's a new eruv, you have to make the oral declaration. If you have to make the oral declaration, we're going now b'shitas Rabbah. That's something that may not be done because of hachana. So why is it that if you did the pas b'yom rishon, why is it that you are allowed to do it b'yom sheni? And the Gemara is not going to hold by it that if you're putting a new loaf of bread, it's not called a renewal, it's called a new thing. So says the Gemara indeed, Amar Shmuel, when are you allowed to replace bread for the second day? That's only if you're using the same loaf of bread. Then it's not called something new, it's called something that you are renewing. And then the declaration that you're made going into Yom Tov, you said for both days, will continue to be valid. No new oral declaration will be needed. And indeed, because in our Mishnah, what was the whole Mishnah? That the Mishnah was Eitz Toiva almost. But the Mishnah was telling you that if you put down the pas b'yom rishon, let the person, let the shliach wait until it gets dark, let him take the bread back, and then let him bring back that loaf of bread. The Mishnah clearly is speaking about using the same loaf. And then, since he removed that bread itself, the Mishnah clearly is giving a mashal of you bringing back the same loaf of bread, and that's taka meduyik. Because if you would not bring back the same loaf of bread, even in the case where both eruvin are being done with bread, even if you attempted to make the declaration before Yom Tov for Yom Tov and Shabbos, it's ineffective. If you bring back a new loaf of bread, you have to make a new declaration. And a new declaration, that's the whole sugya that we're learning. L'shitas Rabbah is prohibited because even though the eruv goes into effect, Tchilas Hayom means it goes into effect on Shabbos, but since the declaration has to be made prior to that, again, we spoke out that theoretically, if you know how to be machaven the sho'is, the way the Eivishter does, if you make that declaration exactly with Tchilas Hayom, which is the beginning of Shabbos, it's going to be a valid eruv, and there's no hachana. But we don't know how to be machaven. We have to make the declaration prior to. We are placing a new loaf of bread. A new loaf of bread. You got to make a new declaration. Hachana. And the Gemara concludes that v'Rabbanan, everything we have been learning was Rabba. Abaya, and like Rashi reminds us over here, and Rabba Bar Chanan that challenged the Rabba from Hachana, they actually hold that a declaration could be made on Yom Tov for Shabbos. That's not called a chana. You're allowed to walk there, you're allowed to put the bread down, and you're allowed to make a declaration. Right? If they hold that that's not included in a chana, so the question is, why did the Mishnah have to give a mashal of you reusing the same loaf of bread? According to them, even you can use a new loaf of bread. You have to make a new declaration, gesund teheit, and a chanami. The Gemara says that Dilma Hassan, meaning our Mishnah, the reason why the Mishnah gives a mashal of reusing the same piece of bread is Pashat Eitzot Levikum Ashmalan. You're not mechuyev to do so. Why would you have to? Why you don't need a new loaf of bread? So keep the same loaf of bread. And like we mentioned, and if you want, you can put the eruv there on out of Yom Tov. And if the shliach doesn't want to wait there, the shliach can go away. He doesn't have to stay there. He doesn't have to bring the bread back. Now, can you rely on that bread? No, you're leaving it out there in the field. Let him go back and bring a new loaf of bread right before Shabbos. Nothing wrong with that. It's just an eitz of teva. If you want, you are able to reuse the same loaf of bread. Okay, so the nakuda remains the same. It's gavaldik that we're going to go on. I mean, daf lamates will continue to ERUVIN, but the hashgacha pratis, both daf mem and daf mem aleph until the Mishnah is mamish going to get completely off the topic of ERUVIN. It's actually going to be related to Rosh Hashanah. As Bahashgacha pratis this year, Tav Shem Pei, we are learning this as we are coming very close already to Rosh Hashanah. But let's go to the same concept. 2 days Rosh Hashanah is not like Yom Tov Shabbos or Shabbos Yom Tov. It is the same Yom Tov. So here there's more tzad on one hand to say it's Kedusha Achas, but on the other hand, really, there's only 1 day Rosh Hashanah. Why do we keep 2 days Rosh Hashanah? Is because we don't know when Beis Din will establish the month. When are they going to establish the new month, which Rosh Chodesh becomes Rosh Hashanah? So it's a suffix. So really, it's 1 day. We keep doing mitzat suffix. Mitzat suffix means they're not connected. If they're not connected, then you could place 2 ERUVIN. If it's 1 kedusha, you can only place 1 ERUV. Says the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Rosh Hashanah shahaya yarei shema tisaber. If there is a possibility that Elul will become a leap Elul, you know what's very interesting, parenthetically, we're going to speak about this more when we learn about this later, maybe on Rosh Hashanah itself, in Masechtas Rosh Hashanah, is that normally when you have 2 days Rosh Chodesh, other than Tishrei, 2 days Rosh Chodesh never means that there's either 29 days, or 2 days Rosh Chodesh means that the prior month has Yom Lamed. Rosh Chodesh is Lamed and Aleph. You know, Tishrei is different. We all know that. Elul has Chavtes Yom. Elul has Chavtes Yom. There's 2 days Rosh Chodesh, Rosh Hashanah, but the 2 days is not Lamed and Aleph. It's Aleph and Beis. But that's only the way it is right now. When we were still establishing the Chodesh, the way ideally it should be established, which is Al Pi Ariyah, that means not only do you have to have witnesses that see the new moon, but they have to go to us Sanhedrin to testify about it. So here, Elul, then Rosh Hashanah was Lamed and Aleph. Chavtas Elul is always going to remain Chavtas Elul. Lamed Elul, now sometimes you know, because of when you know how the movements, you learn the Rambam properly, then it was a soid, but the people who had access to this knowledge of how do the heavenly bodies move, so sometimes you know that the day after Chavtes will be Aleph, for sure. No way in the world no one saw the new moon. But sometimes you don't know. And you don't know whether Lamed will become Aleph, right? Or whether Lamed will remain Lamed, and Rosh Hashanah will be the next day. So you have such a doubt. And because of that doubt, what did everyone do? They kept 2 days Rosh Hashanah, not only far away from where the Shluchim can reach after the Sanhedrin accepted the Edom, but this can even be in here in Eretz Yisrael. You don't know whether the Sanhedrin got Edom and accepted them or not. Just to remember, in those days, 2 days Rosh Hashanah was Lamed and Aleph. So then, Ma'arif Adam Shnei ERUVIN v'Omer. Yes, it is considered 2 separate days because it's 1 day Rosh Hashanah. We have a suffix, which is the day. So 1 day doesn't trap the other. It's not Kedusha Achas. And like we learned, Rabbi Eliezer said in the prior Mishnah, either you can put 1 Erev Berisha in the Mizrach, and you can put the other one L'Maidev. Now, the emes is that one of these 2 days is really not Rosh Hashanah at all. So you're not bound by any tchum, but you don't know that. So just in case, you're placing an Eruv. But you're on the chap. If it's a suffix, one doesn't affect the other. Or you can put the Rishon L'Maidev b'Shein L'Mizrach. Or Eruv Berishain, and you can say I'm only placing the Eruv for the first day Rosh Hashanah. For the second day, I'm using my tchum like Bnei Iri. Or Eruv B'Sheni, the Eruv that I'm placing should be for the second day. So here again, you're going there. The first placement of the Eruv, right? That's a chana. The first placement is going to be done before the first day Rosh Hashanah. Uberishan Bnei Iri. Okay. However, the Chachamim disagree with Rabbi Yehuda, and they hold that since Chazal said that we all have to keep 2 days Rosh Hashanah, now that they said that, it's considered Kedusha Achas. It's considered one long day. So either make an Eruv or don't make an Eruv. And whatever Eruv goes into effect for the first day Rosh Hashanah will be that Eruv for the second day Rosh Hashanah. Now the Mishnah is going to give 2 other examples where this question, whether Rosh Hashanah is considered, it's 2 days, each one is misafik, or is it considered one Kedusha, it's going to affect really 3 areas in halacha, Eruvin and 2 others. Another case, you have a basket of tevel. We learned so many times that mid-rabbanan you may not separate Trumas u'Maasros from tevel on Yom Tiv. Now you have a basket on the first day Rosh Hashanah, so you can separate Trumas u'Maasros in a way on a stipulation. You'll never be allowed to eat it on the first day Rosh Hashanah, but you can make that Tanai Rishain. You can redo it on the second day and you can eat it. And like Rashi speaks out, well, you take the basket, you make a physical separation, and you say, if today is Rosh Hashanah, what I'm doing now is nothing. I'm not allowed to do it on Rosh Hashanah. If today is Erev Rosh Hashanah, then there should be the Truma and the Maasros for that. You can't eat it yet because you don't know whether it's Rosh Hashanah or not. On the second day, you make the same exact declaration on the same fruits. You can't change it. You say, listen, this, if today is Choil, if yesterday was Rosh Hashanah, which means what I did yesterday was not done because I'm not going to be Ma'aser on Yom Tiv, so I'm separating it right now. If today is Yom Tiv, so then what I did yesterday was valid. So once you make this twice, each one on a stipulation, you can have you can have everything. The Truma is Truma, and the rest is not Tevel, it's Mesukin. Chaim, the third nafkamina, whether 2 days of Rosh Hashanah is considered each day Mesafik, or now it's considered one long Kedusha, and as we'll learn in the beginning of Masechtas Beitza, an egg that's born on the first day is born on Yom Tov, may not be consumed. Really, we're going to have 3 reasons over there. However, it could be eaten on the second day. Why can it be eaten on the second day? Again, because you can't eat an egg that came into the world on Yom Tov on that Yom Tov. So what? It came into the world on the first day. So either the first day was Yom Tov and therefore today is after Yom Tov, you can eat it the day after Yom Tov, or it came into the world out of Yom Tov. So Miman of Shach, you can eat it on the second day. And here again, on none of the cases, because the Chachamim hold that it's one Kedusha. One Kedusha. You can't take off Trumas on Yom Tov. You can't do it on either day. You can't eat an egg Shenolda b'Yom Tov. Well, it's one long day, it's one Kedusha. Now that we speak about Rosh Hashanah, this is going to, again, beginning on Daf Mem, we're going to get completely on the topic of Rosh Hashanah and on Tefillos and much more. The following. Whoever's going to daven for the Amid, and B'chlal then, the davener for the Amid, daven for everyone. So, b'Yom Tov shel Rosh Hashanah, Omer, ha'chalitzeinu Hashem Elokeinu, may Hashem fortify for us es yom Rosh HaChodesh hazeh, im hayom im l'machar. Wow. Im hayom im l'machar. Now, Rav Doisa is saying 2 novelties, and taka novelty. First of all, he includes in the tefillos of Rosh Hashanah the mention of Rosh Chodesh. Lav Dafka, we'll see in the Gemara, everyone subscribes to that. Even though Rosh Hashanah is Rosh Chodesh, but it's Rosh Chodesh plus, it's Rosh Hashanah. So it's like a Shiraga B'Tiara. Lav Dafka, you mention it. First of all, you mention Rosh Chodesh. But what he's saying is that since, again, he views these 2 days as each day as a doubt, so you daven by articulating the doubt. If today is Rosh Chodesh, then the Hachalitzenu should happen today. And if not, it should happen tomorrow. That's what you daven on the first day Rosh Hashanah. And Lumachan on the second day Rosh Hashanah, he says that Hachalitzenu Hashem Elokeinu as Yom Rosh HaChodesh is if it's today, or if it was yesterday, Im Emesh. Those you daven, when you speak about the Kedusha of Rosh Hashanah, you put in the prayer words that make it clear that it's a suffix. And the Chachamim disagree. And the big question we'll have, God willing, that's on Daf Mem, what exactly do the Chachamim disagree with? Do they disagree with making of a Tanai? You don't make a Tanai when you daven. Or they agree with a Tanai, but they disagree with adding Rosh Chodesh, the words Rosh Chodesh, in the Tefillah of Rosh Hashanah. Because these are 2 novelties, and we'll discover a lot more of that in the next stuff. Okay, so let's focus on the beginning of the Mishnah. Right, the Mishnah says Rabbi Yehuda versus the Chachamim. Right, that the Chachamim loy hoidu loy Chachamim. Man loy hoidu loy, asks the Gemara. Who are the Chachamim? Normally the Chachamim is the Das Rabbim. Yes, the majority opinion sided with the one who argued with Rabbi Yehuda. Who argued with Rabbi Yehuda? Rabbi Yosi. Again, Rabbeinu HaKadosh calls it Chachamim because everyone sided with him. But it's a machlokes, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Yehuda holds it's safek. Each day is viewed as a safek, and Rabbi Yosi is the one that holds that it's considered kedusha achas. Bit Tanya. Moedim Chachamim Rabbi Eliezer. This is good. I hemshuk to what we learned yesterday. When it comes to Yom Tov and Shabbos, there Rabbi Eliezer was the one that said it's two kedushos. The Chachamim said maybe kedusha achas, maybe. However, the Chachamim are moedim to Rabbi Eliezer. That means, which will be the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda, that's separated. But Rosh Hashanah, that yes, you can make two different ERUVIN in all different formulations. Or so it's not just Rabbi Yehuda. It's Rabbi Yehuda, and it's going to be Rabbi Eliezer, and it's going to be the Chachamim that we learned here. All of that is our Rabbi Yehuda. Rosh Hashanah is a safek, so it's not connected. It's not kedusha achas. However, the Braisa clearly states, which is what our Mishnah calls the Chachamim, that Rabbi Yosi is Oyser, because Rabbi Yosi holds that now that the Chachamim said we have to keep 2 days Rosh Hashanah, now rabbinically it's one Kedusha. It's one long day which has one Kedusha. Rabbi Yosi. Because now you see, Amar Lohen, it's plural. He's not only addressing in this Braisa Rabbi Yehuda, he's addressing the Chachamim with Rabbi Eliezer. That if on Rosh Hashanah, the first day, Eidim come to testify that they saw the new moon last night. If the Beis Din were to accept those Eidim, then they would declare that day Rosh Hashanah, that's it. And the next day would not be Rosh Hashanah anymore. That would make the Yom Lamed into Yom Aleph, and that's it. But aren't you moide that the halacha is that we don't accept them? We don't accept them. And nevertheless, if we don't accept them, we don't say that since we don't accept them, now it became clear that that day is only Erev Rosh Hashanah. No. On one hand, we don't accept them. But on the other hand, and clearly, here there is no suffix. You know what it means? Here is no suffix. Once you don't accept the Eidim, bisman that you only make the Chodesh al pi Eidim, if you don't accept them, then the first day is not even a suffix. The first day is really not Rosh Hashanah. Nevertheless, you got to keep 2 days. So what does that prove? It proves it's one Kedusha. It's not only a suffix. For whatever, they had a reason why. They had a reason that once Eidim come and Amin Cholomayla don't accept the Eidim. Automatically it remains Rosh Hashanah. Because if you would not do that, then many people the next year around, it remains. Many people the year around will be noig zoil. They'll say, maybe today's not Rosh Hashanah. It remains Rosh Hashanah regardless. It's not even a doubt. And nevertheless, it's Rosh Hashanah, so it's not a suffix. It can be vaday not, and still you have to keep it. That makes it into Kedusha Achas. Oh, so that's Rabbi Yosi's Taina, Daf Lamed Tes Amud Beis. The Rabbanon, they say no. That the reason why the remaining of the first day is observed as Rosh Hashanah, it's only a precautionary measure. It's not called Kedusha Achas. It's a separate din of the Chachamim. People should not treat it lightly in subsequent years. People might work before Mincha. So now you know that the more it's consistently that day is going to be Rosh Hashanah, in the subsequent years, they'll be careful always to keep all of the dinim of Rosh Hashanah on what we would call Yom Lamed Elul. Okay, so bottom line is, Gavaldik Machlokes, that we really have 3 expressions in the Mishnah 2 days Rosh Hashanah, which really begins that we don't know when Beis Din will establish Rosh Hashanah. And being that it's the first day of the month, so then even people that lived in proximity to the Sanhedrin also did not know. And you keep 2 days Rosh Hashanah. Is it Mesafek? It's 1 day, but we don't know which day. That's the way we generally look at it. And therefore, 1 day doesn't tie the other. You can place 2 ERUVIN in different directions. Or Shitas Rabbi Yossi, that now that Chazal said that you're keeping 2 days Rosh Hashanah, it's considered one rabbinic kedusha of Rosh for 48 hours. God says 24 hours. The Chachamim said 48 hours. One kedusha, only one eruv. V'oid Amar Rabbi Yehuda, that the same Shita Rabbi Yehuda, it's Misafik, versus the Chachamim finds expression in the case of the basket of the tevel, and it finds expression in the case of the egg that came into the world on the first day Rosh Hashanah. So the Gemara wants to know, why did they have to argue in all 3 cases when it's really one argument? Explains the Gemara. The Ashminan, only the first case, right? What's the Aleph and the Bach? The Ashminan, Reisham, Bahab, which is the case of Rosh Hashanah. Then Bahak Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda has the lenient opinion. It's a lenient opinion that each day is a day misafik, and therefore you are permitted to place 2 separate eruvim, or place an eruv for 1 day and the bachlala for the other day. That's because mishum deloy ka'avid midi, as we explained in the previous daf, because of the issue of hachana. Because of the issue of hachana, you are not doing anything. Really, the ikir placement, whether it is for 1 day, whether it is even for 2 days that you could place, is all done ahead of the first day Rosh Hashanah. It's done before, because of not to get into the hachana issue. So therefore, there's no secondary worry by doing anything on the second day. Abo kalkala, how does Rabbi Yehuda allow you to be mesak and tevel? You have to actually separate trumos, not once, twice, on the first day Rosh Hashanah and on the second day Rosh Hashanah. Now I know that you're making a statement that if today is Rosh Hashanah, what I'm doing is nothing, too garnished. But if today is not Rosh Hashanah, then this is the hafrasha. And then you have to do it again on the second day. That means you're doing an action that appears like a tikkun of tevel, on both days. Then maybe, even though Rabbi Yehuda holds that really it's a suffix on each day, but they would say you may not do it nonetheless because it doesn't look good. So that's why Rabbi Yehuda needed to share his opinion that even in the case of a basket of Trumas U'Maisres, that you are allowed to make a separation al Tanai. The again, that Rabbi Yehuda is the lenient opinion. You could place 2 eruvim. You are allowed to be misakim, tevel, bitnai, and then eat it on the second day. That's mishum delekala migzar alayu. There's no additional reason why for the chachamim to make exeda, to say that we have to make a preventative measure. We'll see what the issue will be in the third case. But in the case of the Beitza, now guys, a little bit of a foresight or a chazor of why takev a Beitza is noilad b'yamtiv, why may you not consume it? So many people are familiar with noilad, which is connected to muktzah. Let me give you 2 other reasons that the Gemara says in the beginning of Beitza. One reason is because Chazal made a takana that if produce falls off a tree, if a fruit falls off the tree by itself on Yom Tiv, you may not consume that fruit on Yom Tiv. Why? Because Gzeira, you'll take it off. And if you take it off, you're even on Koitzer. So they view an egg leaving the body of the chicken like a fruit, even though it happened naturally, but it's included in that Gzeira. And the third reason is because there's remember the whole issue, can you have liquids that oozed out of fruits by itself? We learned that not that long ago. No, Midrabanan, you may not. Why may you not? Because for you to extract the liquids, right, dosh, taking one object from within the other, that's also in Midoraisa. So they hold that included in the Gzeira of not drinking liquids that ooze out of liquids automatically don't have the egg. Let's read it inside. Which either one. In other words, this same reason why they said a beitza that is born on Yom Tov may not be consumed, one would argue that even Rabbi Yehuda's moedim, yes, really it's a suffix. So mimanav shach, right, the second day you can consume it. Well, that's all theoretically. But if a person will see you, we don't know that. We know it's Rosh Hashanah. And if I'm going to see one consuming an egg that was born on the first day Rosh Hashanah, even though I'm only consuming it on the second day Rosh Hashanah, I will erroneously think that if a fruit fell off the tree on Yom Tov, I can eat it. And that's a problem. And that might lead me to koitzit. Or if the other reason of beitza was mishum mashkin, shazavu, automatically that may not be consumed because of gzeda you might do dash to take it out. So maybe again, Rabbi Yehuda will be machmer, even though it's suffix. So that's why we needed Rabbi Yehuda to give his shita all the 3 times. And the Chachamim simply need to say, no, they're never moida, but they're not moida, not because of gezedas, not because it doesn't look good, because they take a hold that both days Rosh Hashanah is Kedusha Achas, and with ERUVIN, you can't place an Eruv for half a day. Either you place it or you don't place it. You can't be Mesakim Tevel on Yom Tif, it's on Yom Tif. Can't have a Beitza Shanol to be Yom Tif. Okay. More Chavra now on this conditional designation, the second case in the Mishnah, L'Rabbi Yehuda, that you can make a condition b'yom Rishon, you make a condition b'yom Sheni, and then on the second day you may consume it, as we spoke out when we learned the Mishnah. So here the Braisa goes into more details. Tanya. Keitzad Omar Rabbi Yehuda Masne Adam Al Hakal Kol b'yom Tov Rishon v'Oichel b'Sheni. The Braisa gives an example, guys. It's only an example. It's an example that makes it easy. It's an example that doesn't even demand of you to make a physical separation, which is even easier. With a mushal, to begin with, you have 2 baskets, all tevel, and they're all, it's min hamukaf. The one is basket is near the other. And even though that the Braisa is going to be speaking about truma, it means truma and meiser and everything else. And Omer, he says on the first day, Im hayoim choil, maybe, right? If we're going to go there, it's a suffix. I'm keeping Yom Tov, but really, we don't know. If today is a Yom Choil and tomorrow's Kodesh, so my declaration is that this should go into effect now. The Hezu, basket number 1, should be Truman basket number 2. However, he speaks it out based on Tanach Kaf. The Im hayoim Kodesh u'machar choil. We're going to learn in Dinei Tanoim, there are 4 rules in Tanoim. One is you have to speak it out on both sides. So he has to make sure he speaks it out properly. But if today is Kodesh and tomorrow is the day after, then ein bidvarai klum. Then what I'm doing right now is nothing. Of course, I'm not going to violate the rabbanans of not being mesakin. My tevla can be mesakin on Shabbos and Yom Tov. And the koira oleh Hashem. Koira Hashem is the word that Chazal used by separation of trumas or meises. You are designating. You make the designation. And umanicha, but you can't have it because you don't know whether today is Kodesh. Maybe today is Kodesh. And you said yourself that if today is Kodesh, ein bidvarai klum. Then ulamachar on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, hu omer im hayom choil. Today is no longer Rosh Hashanah because yesterday was. Then tehezu again, you speak to the same basket. Basket A should be the truma for basket B. With all the details, guys. Normally truma is 2%, but you know what? If you want. Right, Meiser has to be after Truma exactly 10%, but Truma can be any amount. Chazal asked of you not to give less. The Adam Beinin should not give less than 2%. But even if it's a 50-50, a basket and a basket, each one has the same amount, no problem. You can give all that basket for Truma. You say that the Hezu Truma Zu, and then the Im Hayom Kodesh, but if today is Kodesh, then you also speak out Ein bidvarai klum. And again, v'koid oleh Hashem, you designate basket number 1. And now, mimanachshach v'oichla, you can eat basket number 2. However, like we have...
Rabbi.
Yeah.
In this case, with the conditional designation, are we still saying that he has to wait to the second day in order to eat it, according to everybody?
Of course he has to wait, because maybe the first day of Rosh Hashanah is Take Rosh Hashanah, and he said himself that if today is Kodesh, ein bidvarai klum. Yeah. Now, Rabbi Yosid, which is the Tanach that in our Mishnah is the Chachamim. That was the beginning of the Gemara. Who's the Tanach? Who's the Chachamim? It was originally, Rabbi Yosid was the Bar Pluta. Rabbi Yosid, because again, rabbinically, it's one long day. You may not separate Trumais on Yom Tov. Now, here is the key line. Now we're going, so we began Yom Tov, Shabbos, Shabbos, Yom Tov. That was Daf Lamed Ches. Daf Lamed Ches was 2 days Rosh Hashanah, and now we are transitioning to 2 days of Golus. In Bisman that we were Makadosh al Pi Ariyah, After the Sanhedrin established, accepted the Eidim, so there was a certain day that was declared Rosh Chodesh, then they would send out shluchim, write the whole story. That first they began by lighting torches, and then the people, they lit torches even though there was no witnesses, and they created chaos. No more torches. Now it's shluchim. Well, it takes time for shluchim to get to the destination, and you can't travel on Shabbos. So the people that lived outside Eretz Yisrael, and even places that geographically were relatively close to the Beis HaMikdash, but there were no communities during that time, so no shluchim ever came there. If there was a yid that happened to be there, they would keep 2 days May Safek. And even though now we have from the second Hillel, from the minor Hillel, we have an established calendar, but what we call is Minig Aviseinu B'Yodenu, we continue what happened then. But what happened then? Safek, they didn't know. Right? Pesach is Tezvav Nisan. They kept 2 days because they didn't know which day is Tezvav Nisan. So listen to this. Is mashma, like he's speaking about Pesach and he's speaking about Sukkot, and yes, he's speaking about Shavuos, even though the kasha on Shavuos is, why was there ever a suffix on Shavuos? Because the Torah doesn't give a date for the Yom Tov of Shavuos. It's really like the 50th day from the Omer. And by then, the Shluchim should reach everywhere. But like plug, whatever the reason is, that we kept in Golos 2 days, here it's mashma, that Rabbi Yossi is being machmir, it's again a machmir, by considering them not suffix, by considering it one long day. For all the dinim we learned in the Mishnah, the Bryce is speaking about the kalkala of Truma. You cannot designate bitnai and eat it on the second day. You can't do that. That's what it's mashma, right? That's in the words. Says the Gemara story, and now we'll see that lav dafka, this is what Rabbi Yossi meant. Hahu bar Tavia, there was a deer, the Asel Reish Galusa, it was brought to the house of the Reish Galusa. When was it trapped? When was it prepared? So says the Gemara, the story was that the Itztid, the Yom Tov Rishon Shel Galuyos, it was trapped by Goyim on the first day of Pesach or on the first day of Sukkot. Now, Chevra, trapping, right, is something that one may not do biblically, not even on Yom Tov, because it's taka oichel nefesh, but you could have trapped it the day before. It won't make the food fresher. So this is an act that's also midoraisa, and as we learned many times, that Chazal made a takana. Even if you didn't tell the guy to do it, even if you didn't tell him to do it, if a guy did something for you, the yid, there's details to that, you may not derive benefit on that day, and more than that, even after that day passes, you have to wait normally b'chdei sheyasu, not to benefit from what the guy did for you. It was trapped on the first day of Yom Tov. However, it was brought to the house of the Reish Galusa. When did they shecht it? Now, shechting is mutter by a yid. You can shecht on Yom Tov. You can, from shechting and on, it's oichel nefesh. And the ish techit the Yom Tov sheni. Now, what's the issue here? What's the same issue? It's the same issue. If you view it as kedusha achas, which is a stretch, because Mele Rosh Hashanah, here it's mamash, it's a suffix. But if we're going to say it's kedusha achas, well, the goy trapped it on that first 2 days, that 48-hour period. So no yid can benefit from it during those 48-hour periods. But if you don't view it as kedusha achas, if we're going to look at least, if we're going to say the emes is lekula alma, that the 2 days of Yom Tov, chutz la'aretz, are not kedusha achas. Each day is a suffix, and now we are continuing this. Each day is a suffix. So then you can eat it on the second day. Mimon avshach. If the first day was kodesh, say that you waited b'chdei sheyasu. You didn't eat it the moment the Yom Tov went out. You shechted it on the second day. If today is kodesh, then it was trapped and brought to us on a Yom Chayil. So says the Gemara, Nachman and Abchizda that were there, they ate it because obviously they felt that it's a suffix. It's not one kedusha. However, Absheshes, yes, considered it kedusha achas, and therefore he didn't eat it. And the other, to Rav Nachman and Abchizda, were troubled. Why would Absheshes have that such an opinion? Omer Rav Nachman, My Abed Leila Rab Sheshes Delo Yachol. Bisra de Tavia. What can I do? Like, why isn't he eating it? Amalei Rab Sheshes. What do you mean? How can I eat it? Why would I eat it? The Tani Isi, he's quoting a Braisa that Isi, but Amri Law that the words that he used was Isi Tani, and now this Isi quoted the Braisa that we just learned above. We have to get the right words. You have to understand what Rabbi Yossi meant. So yeah, so just like Rabbi Yossi argues in our Mishnah and Rosh Hashanah, he knew this Braisa Rab Sheshes that Rabbi Yossi says that also regarding 2 days Yom Tov of Goliath. That means that l'shitaso it's kedusha achas, so it makes sense why I am not eating it. Amar Rava umay kushya. No. My kushya means that if Taka, this is this Braisa, then why did Rav Nachman wonder? Listen, Rav Nachman has the right not to pass like Rabbi Yossi, if he had such a right. I mean, an Amayra can side with that Tana. But why was he wondering on Rav Sheshes? Now it's a kasha on Rav Nachman. What? My evidence with Rav Sheshes? What? You didn't know that there was such a Braisa? No, says the Gemara. He didn't know. He didn't accept that Rav Sheshes has any leg to lean on. My kushya, Dilma Hachika Amar V'Kach V'Chein. Hoya Rabbi Yossi Oyser B'Shnei Yom Tov Shel Rosh Hashanah B'Goyla. At the same achloikas you have regarding 2 days Yom Tov in Eretz Yisrael, the same thing will be B'Goyla. Rabbi Yossi needed to say that because Rabbi Yossi on every other 2 day Yom Tov B'Goyla out of Israel does not hold its kedusha achas. Does not hold it's a suffix. Elama, even though Rabbi Yossi does not consider the 48 hours of the 15th and 16th of Nisan as one Kedusha, or by Sukkos, or by Atzeres, Rabbi Yossi nevertheless holds that the Rosh Hashanah is considered Kedusha Achas, even B'chutz La'aretz. But Rabbi Yossi was never speaking about Stam Yom Tov. That's why, according to Rav Nachman, Rav Sheshes had no one to lean on. Why does the Braisa say the words Shel Goliyos? Shel Goliyos is mashma, a Yom Tov that only Chutz La'aretz has 2 days, which is Yom Tov. But if you're telling me that it's referring to Rosh Hashanah, then he should not have said a Yom Tov Shel Goliyos, because 2 days Rosh Hashanah is observed even in Eretz Yisrael. He should have said the words Bagoyla, which is describing not the type of Yom Tov, but where. Bagoyla mi boyle. Okay. Amar Rav Asi umay kushyam. Dilma hachika Amar. No, still Rav Nachman is right. By wondering on Rav Sheshes. Don't tell me that the word Shel Goliyos implies that Rav Sheshes is right. No, it's not. V'chein hoy Rabbi Yossi oise isur shnei yomim tovim Shel Goliyos. Look at this. Look how he's reading the Braisa. That even Rabbi Yossi behaved regarding the 2 days of Goliyos. Kishnei Yom Shel Rosh Hashanah, not like his opinion, not like Kedusha Achas, but like to everyone else. That they were lenient, that they allowed us to view it as 2 separate suffix days. In other words, the version that Rav Nachman and Rav Chisda had on the Braisa has it clear that Rabbi Yossi does not say his din on the 2 days of Yom Tov, Pesach, Atzeres, and Sukkos. And therefore, again, Rav Sheshes, there was no reason for him not to eat the deer. Now, Rav Sheshes was being challenged, so he was trying to back himself up. So, Ashkechei Rav Sheshes, LaRabba Bar Shmuel, and Amar Rav Sheshes asked him, did you learn something that maybe we don't know yet? Regarding how do we view the 2 days of Pesach, the 2 days of Shavuos or Sukkos? Yeah, I learned the Braisa, and Taka, no one heard that. The problem is the Braisa was against Rav Sheshes. That Moide Rabbi Yossi B'Shnei Yomim Tovim Shel Goliyos, that it is not considered Kedusha Achas. So now Rav Sheshes is really refuted. So we have this every now and then. So Amar Lei Oigaval, so Rav Sheshes tells Rabba Bar Shmuel, Timach HaToiva, if you find Rav Nachman or Rav Chisda, like don't start telling them this Braisa because this Taka refutes my view. Leave me at peace. But anyways, here we see that Rav Sheshes is refuted. That's the conclusion. And we read the words of Rabbi Yossi. We have 2 different options. Even Rabbi Yossi only says a shita Kedushas Achas by Rosh Hashanah, not by the 2 days of Goliyos. Says the Gemara, second to last line of the Amid, that Amar Ravashi, Bechlal, the whole Maisa was a different Maisa. I heard from a member that that case of the deer that they brought to the house of the Reish Galusa wasn't lav itztude itzted. It wasn't the case where it was trapped. Look inside the last line of the Amen. Lav itztude itzted. The Vadai, how can it even be that Rav Sheshes would not eat it because of that? The Vadai, Shita Rav Sheshes, that if a deer is trapped on the first day of Yom Tov, on Pesach, let's say, or on Sukkot, and you are only shechting it on the second day, of course, a guy did no work for you on Yom Tov, and if he did, because the first day is Yom Tov, you have the Rechdei Sheyasu, Eloma, the Shari B'Sheni. It's not one Kedusha. Ella, Daf Mem, let's continue this. It was a whole different story. And that was not about trapping, but they brought it Michutz L'Tchum. On the second day, here again, guys, if it would be brought Michutz L'Tchum on the first day, there's no issue, because they didn't eat it on the first day. So again, you have this miman of shach. Everyone holds that it's two kedushas, where it's called safik. It's not kedusha achas midrabanan. They brought it on the second day. Ooh, 1 second. If they bring something for you on the second day, so again, any violation that is done by a goy for a yid, the yid cannot derive benefit thereof. So man, now we have to understand, Rav Nachman and Rav Chisda. Savar, haba b'shvil Yisrael zeh mutel Yisrael achar. This is very important. Really, these words are only because it's michutz l'tchum. Let me just add that little nuance. If a guy does something for the Reuven, but what he does is asur midai raisa, then not only may Reuven not benefit from it, nor Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. But since the problem is that a violation of a rabbinic rule was made, they brought something chutz l'tchum, tchum and midrabanan. So over here, we are a little bit more lenient. It's almost like a double derabanan. The whole problem is only midrabanan. And take, even though it's only midrabanan, if the guy brought it for the Reuven cannot eat it on that day. But they brought it to the house of the Reish Galusa. They didn't bring it for Rav Nachman or Rav Chisda. There are other Yidden. And they held that again, Haba b'shvil Yisrael zeh, when only a rabbinic rule was violated, mutal Yisrael acher, beautiful. Uman de lo yachar, which is Rav Sheshes Savar, that called the Asay L'Bei Reish Galusa. It was not brought only for the head of the Jewish government. It was brought to his house. He represents the Jewish people. Achdus Yisrael, or that the Nasi who are Koil. Moshe Yisrael are Moshe. So it is brought for all the Yidden. Adata de Kulu Rabbanan Nasi. Kinigla Rabbanan means only the Rabbanan, but let's expand this concept. He represents the community. Achdus Yisrael. So it was brought for the community, so that's why he didn't eat it. Now, if this was the whole version, then we had a story on Amud Beis that doesn't fit. That the Rav Sheshes, he felt that he was being refuted, right? So he found the Rabbi Bar Shmuel, and he asked him, "Did you learn a brisa?" And then he told him a brisa, which refuted him. And he says, "Oh, Gaval, don't share it with them." Says the Gemara, "How can you tell me this version?" And Ba'amar Li, the whole story that we learned. So the Gemara says, according to Rav Ashi, Lo Yehoyed Dvarim Ha'olam. Lo Yehoyed Dvarim Ha'olam. My Zayda used to say that famous word that as a Chussid tells you a story, what happened with the Rebbe. So like this, if he says that he saw it, then maybe it's true. If he said he heard a story, is Lo Yehoyed V'Lo Nivra, or Lo Yehoyed Dvarim Ha'olam. Never happened, so they had a Maisa. It could be the whole Maisa. It's good to know that. We believe that it could have happened, but not dafka every story, even though they're saying he said this and he's with Allah pratim. It's a very humorous way of concluding. It's nicht gefährlich. It could be that to be continued.
Rabbi.
Rabbi. Daf Mem and Daf Mem Aleph, at least until the end of the Perek, is really a whole different topic. It's about davening. It's about how to daven on Rosh Hashanah. It's amazing. Like, do we mention Rosh Chodesh? Take a look in your Machzor. You'll get confused. And why do we add when do we add Yalav Yavi B'chlal? And Machlokas Tanoim, whether we add the mention of Rosh Chodesh during the Tzei, whether we add it in Moedim, it's Machlokas Tanoim. We're going to have a lot of davening, all about the second part of the Mishnah. So let's aim to learning this Motzei Shabbos at 9:45, which is very easy. We're going to learn for around 2 hours, or maybe we'll make it shorter. Tzvika shackling the head. and then we'll have enough time to go back to shul. We'll make a good farbrengen, and we'll daven slichas at 10 to 1. And like this,
And
we get-
Sunday?
And Sunday davening is at 8. But if we're going to go to sleep 2 in the morning,
Got
at
it.
least people who are getting
So you're saying
older-
it's instead of, it's, okay, good. Thank you.
Rabbi,
Yes.
Rabbi, this
Yes.
case of Rabashi, where
Yeah.
he's saying they brought the deer from outside the Tchum, isn't this a triple Darabanan? First of all, Yom Sheni Shel Kol Yos is Darabanan. Tchumim is Darabanan. Amir al-Nachri is Darabanan. You're talking a shvus to shvus to shvus.
Yeah, Danny, you're making a good point. I want to add.
And by the way, and it's for a Yom
So this Yom
Tov.
Tov,
Mitzvah.
so this good, 100%.
And Reb Shesha still wouldn't need it. Wow. That's Mamash HaMachmer.
But you saw how they were onto him. They were upset with him. That's why Rav Nachman says, "Oh, what kind of craziness is this? What is he doing?" It bothered Rav Nachman. Okay, good.
All right.